I was coaching a product manager last week. We're on a Zoom call having a conversation. The person's sharp, articulate, confident. They're telling me about their work, the product decisions they made, the teams they led, the metrics they moved. Sounded like a senior leader because they're one. So I said, hey, let's run a quick mock interview as you have your interview coming up. Tell me about yourself. And suddenly, a completely different person showed up. The confidence vanished. The sentences got tangled. They started rambling. 4 minutes of context when I needed just, 60 seconds of understanding what was happening. And I'm sitting here thinking, dude, what happened? You were just talking to me like a leader 30 seconds ago. And now you sound like you're apologizing for being in the room. And this isn't some junior PM. This is someone with about 15 years of experience. Someone who makes real decisions every day. Someone whose team trusts their judgment. But the moment I said interview, something broke. And that's what this interview is about. Because the problem is not that the person was not prepared. They were. They had their star story. They'd done mock interviews. They'd even watched YouTube videos, maybe even mine. The problem is that interview preparation isn't enough anymore. The product managers who are actually landing offers at 300K, 400K, 600K and beyond, they're not just preparing for interview. They're training something fundamentally different. I call it interview agility. And once you understand the difference, you'll never go back to the old way. So let's talk about what most product managers do to prepare for interviews. And look, I'm not going to trash all of it. Some of it is necessary, but it's table stakes now. And it's not the thing that gets you hired for those in-demand roles. Here's the typical playbook. You write out your star stories. You practice them. Maybe you do a few mocks with a friend or a coach. You review the company's values or leadership principles. You tweak your resume. You read some articles. You feel that you are ready. And then you walk into the interview. And the interviewer asks you something that you didn't rehearse. Or they ask a question that's similar to what you prepared, but not exactly. And now you're trying to force fit your prepared answer into a different question. And the interviewer can tell. They can always tell. And this is the one that really kills people's chances. They ask you something you did prepare for and you give a good answer, but it's at the wrong level. You're answering like a senior product manager and they're hiring for a director. The answer is solid for a senior PM. The execution story is real, but the debrief reads not senior enough and you never find out why. Here's the core problem. Traditional interview preparation is static. Interviews are dynamic. You prepare for question A, they ask question B, you prepared your stories at one level, they are hiring at a different level. You prepared for a behavioral round and the interviewer pivoted to a product sense question mid-conversation. You prepared for Amazon's leadership principle and this company has completely different values and they're looking for different signals. The more senior the role, the more dynamic the interview gets. At the senior PM level, okay, they might follow a script. They might ask you 5 behavioral questions and grade each one. But at a higher level, like principal, director, and above, it's a conversation. It's fluid. The interview is probing, following up, changing direction based on your answers. And if all you have is a script, you're toast. Think of it this way. Interview preparation is like memorizing a speech. Interview agility is like being a great conversationalist, a great debater. A speech breaks the moment something unexpected happens. Someone interrupts, the audience shares, the context changes. A great conversationalist adapts. They read the room. They adjust. They're just as compelling whether the conversation goes left or right. And here's why this matters even more right now. We are in what I call a risk recession. Hiring managers aren't looking for high potential candidates. They're looking to reduce the risk of a bad hire. Every hire is defensive. Every shortlist is conservative. And when 3 candidates show up with the same STAR framework, the same ChatGPT polished answers, the same prepared stories, the one who wins is the one who can actually think in the room, not just perform, think and adapt. Look, AI has made everyone's preparation look the same. Literally the same framework, same structure, same buzzwords. The product managers who stand out are now the ones who clearly aren't reading from a script. By the way, if you ever try to read from a script in the interview, never do that. The ones where the interviewer thinks, the person isn't performing, they're communicating. There's a real leader across the table from me. That's interview agility, and almost nobody is training for it. Okay, so let me define this clearly. What is this interview agility? Interview agility is the ability to adapt your responses in real time based on who's across the table, what level they're hiring at, what they're actually testing for, and what they need to hear to say yes. It's not about having better answers. It's about having the right answer for this moment, this interview, this role. And it breaks down into 3 dimensions. I'll walk you through each of them. Let's start with dimension number 1, level calibration. This is the big one. It's the one that costing product managers the most money. Literally 6 figures. 200K PM or senior PM answer, depending on the company, sounds fundamentally different from a 400K principal or director answer, which sounds fundamentally different from 600K answer. Same person, same career, same experience, completely different framing. In fact, I'll tell you, there was somebody who we initially had in our program, and they did their first mocks. And I was like, oh, this is a great mock. This is absolutely perfect. If you're a senior PM, guess how many product managers this person already managed? 75. Yes, 75. But they need to frame their answer completely differently. So let me give you an example. Say you led a product launch. Here's how that story sounds at different levels. Let's call it a L4 version. I led the cross-functional team. I defined the requirements with engineering. We shipped on time. Adoption went up 15% in the first quarter. Good candidate for L4. That's a fine answer. Demands, it demonstrates execution. It's clear. It's real. Now, here's the director version of the exact same experience. I identified a strategic gap in a product portfolio that was costing us enterprise deals. I built the business case, got executive buy-in to fund a new product line, stood up a team of 8, and we launched in 4 months. That product drove $20 million in incremental revenue in year 1 and fundamentally shifted our competitive positioning in the enterprise segment. It's actually the same story I'm deriving the answer from. Same person, same launch. But the director version leads with the strategic decision, not the execution. It shows business judgment. It shows organizational influence. It shows that you're thinking like a business owner, somebody who owns a profit and loss, even though you might technically not someone who just owns a backlog. That's a huge difference. Here's what happens when you get this wrong. You walk into a director interview and you tell the senior PM version. The interviewer nods. The answer's solid. You walk out feeling good, and then the debrief says, strong executor, not senior enough, maybe down-level them, maybe just say no. You never find out why, you just get rejected, and you get this generic email that says, we had more qualified candidates in the pipeline. And you're like, WTF, I did the exact same job before. The calibration gap between these 2 answers is worth anywhere from 100K to 300, 500K in annual compensation. I'm not kidding, because I know PMs who are getting L4 hires at a very generous level, 300K, Google L4 level, and an L7 level at 900K to $1 million. It's just fundamentally different. And most product managers don't even know that they're answering at the wrong level. Now let's talk about the second part, because that's just as critical. Story flexing. Here's something that might surprise you. You don't need 30 stories to be great in interviews. You need, in some cases, 3, some cases 5 deep narratives that you can flex depending on what's being asked. So one of our clients recently landed at Expedia. His name is Nikhil. He went through 6 interviews across 3 rounds. Hiring manager, 4-person loop with senior directors, and a final closing round. You know how many narratives he had ready? 3 narratives. And he passed every single round. And he did so many, many times. How? Because he didn't have 3 rigid scripts. He had 3 deep story maps that he could navigate from any entry point, emphasizing different things depending on what the question was actually testing. Let me show you what I mean. Say you have a story about launching a feature despite significant pushback from the engineering team. That one story could demonstrate 4 or 5 different things depending on which thread you pull and where you focus on. If they're testing leadership, you emphasize how you align the team around a shared vision despite resistance. If you're testing data-driven decision-making, you emphasize the data you use to build the case and how it changed minds. If they're testing customer focus, you emphasize the customer insight that drove the decision in the first place. If they're testing stakeholder management, well, you emphasize how you navigated the politics, without calling it politics, and brought the right people along. Same story, 4 completely different angles. The rudimentary product manager is basically trying to learn up every answer, or maybe not even thinking through the answer. The person who's in this agility mindset is basically saying, cool, I am able to adapt the answers. They've practiced the art of adapting their stories. They can pick one in real time based on what the interview is actually probing for. And as a result, they have to hold less things in their head and they go in more confident. Big part. And that leads to the next part, which is just as important, reading the room. This is the one nobody talks about and might be the most important, because most people think interviews are all about learning up answers, being totally prepared, and then going in just like, here's my answer. It's not true. Can you tell when an answer isn't landing? Can you feel it? And if you can feel it, can you adjust mid-answer? Do you have the confidence to stop and ask the interviewer, is that resonating for you? Was that what you were looking for? Because I have a different approach or a different example for this. You know the interview is looking for something and you're willing to be like, oh, maybe that was not the best answer, but hey, it could be something better. And they're surprised. There are signals everywhere in an interview. And the interview leaning in or leaning back, they're taking notes or they've stopped writing. Did they ask a follow-up questions, which means that they're interested, or did they move on to the next question? Do you actually see them actively checking Slack and like ignoring you? You can understand when you're nailing it or when you're cutting their losses. Now, for most people, they don't want to know it because they are too worried, they're too self-absorbed. But the ones that are well prepared and have the agility, they actually want to figure out in real time whether things are working or not, and they're willing to adjust. See, some interviewers want depth. They want the full context, the nuance, the trade-offs. Other interviewers want brevity, like me. I get bored very quickly. So they want the headline, the decision, the result in like 90 seconds to a minute. And you often don't know which one you're getting until you're in the middle of your answer. The prepared product manager delivers the same story the same way every time, regardless of signals. The product manager with the agility mindset reads the room and adjusts. They see the interviewer checking the clock and they tighten up. They see the interviewer leaning in and they add more color. They sense an answer didn't land and they pivot. They add a sharper example, bridge to a stronger proof point, or even say, let me actually reframe that. Here's the version that might actually answer the question that you asked. The PMs who bomb interviews aren't the ones who give bad answers. They're the ones who can't tell when an answer is not landing and don't know how to adjust. That's an agility problem, not a preparation problem. Here's the thing that ties it all together. And this is the part that you might not give enough importance to, and many people don't. Most product managers think that if I'm confident, I'll perform well in interviews. So they try their best to, appear confident. They're like, fake it till you make it. Power poses, telling themselves they've got this, trying to feel confident before they walk in the room. And actually that's useful. It's not completely wrong. In fact, I tell all my clients to do that, but it's just not enough. Confidence is not just about, getting in that state and trying to figure out what to do. It's a strategic skill set. And it's not the input to interview agility. It's the output. When you've trained agility, when you've built deep narratives you can flex in any direction, when you practice at multiple levels, when you've pressure tested in mock interviews that are genuinely tougher than the real thing, you walk into an interview knowing that nothing can catch you off guard. Not because you've prepared for every question, that's impossible, but because you've built the skill of adapting to any question. And that changes your entire psychology. The tension drops, your breathing slows, you stop performing and start communicating. The interviewer feels it. They feel someone who's present, grounded, and in command. I talked earlier about that coaching session where someone was calm in conversations and panicked in a mock. That's an association problem. The brain has wired interview to mean test. I'm probably going to fail this. And that wiring runs deep. Years of rejections, awkward silences, walking out of rooms, knowing that you messed up. You said the wrong thing. But when you train agility, the association changes. The interview stops being a test. It becomes a conversation about why you're the right leader for this role. And that shift from test to conversation, it's the single biggest unlock I've seen in working with 1,000 product managers. Nikhil said it best after his Expedia loop. I was so confident going in, I could see the reaction of the interviewers. They knew I knew my stuff and that I had made impact. Before I would just ramble on. Now, every round, my confidence was really high. Sometimes the mock interviews were tougher than the actual interviews. The last line is key. The mocks were harder than the real thing. So the real thing felt manageable, simple, even comfortable. That's what agility training does. It raises the floor so high. The actual interview feels like the easy version. Another client, Tommy. This guy was worried about performing at top companies. He changed how he communicated his product leadership experience, not what he said, but how he flexed it. And he passed 90% of 25 plus interviews with members of the hiring team. 90%. That's not preparation. You can't do it with just pure preparation and learning and everything. It's a skill. It's agility in action. Okay, look, if you are hearing this so far and you realize that, look, I really need help and really need to figure out how to build interview agility, I encourage you to book a breakthrough session, a clarity session as we call it now with my team, so that we can figure out what exactly is going on right now. Why have you not made it past the interviews you've had? And how do you get to the answers for the right level, the level that you're actually targeting, and obviously get a massive compensation increase. The link is in the description. Book a call with us. So let's get practical. I want to give you a framework that you can start using today. 4 steps, Step 1, build deep narratives, not scripted answers. 3 to 5 stories maximum, career moments where you drive significant impact. And I mean real impact, not I managed the backlog, but I made a decision that changed the trajectory of the business or the product. For each one, map out 4 things: the decision you made, the tension or difficulty involved, the outcome, and the business results. Don't write a script. I can't stress this enough. Do not write a script. If you write a script, you will memorize a script. When the interview goes sideways, which it will, you'll have nothing. Instead, build a story map. Think of it like a musician who knows a song. They can start from any verse. It's like a jazz musician, to be honest. Not even knowing a song, you can improvise. They can adjust the tempo. They're not reading sheet music. They just know the territory. That's what you want with your narratives. You know the landscape of each story so deeply that you can enter it from any direction, answer any question with it, navigate to the right point, zoom in, zoom out, and then practice at multiple levels. This is where most product managers have never gone. It's the biggest lever. Take each of your narratives and practice delivering at your target level. That's important. The content changes less than you think. What changes is what you emphasize. At maybe a senior PM level, let's say L4, Google L4 level, you lead with execution. What you built, how you built it, what the metrics showed. At a high level, you lead with the strategic decisions, the business case, why it mattered, what you chose not to do, how you built and led the team, what the business looked like before and after. And then as you go even higher, you talk about organizational influence, building teams, shaping strategy, aligning executives, building team culture, coaching other PMs, how they shape the company's direction or competitive positioning. If you can only tell your story at a target level, you can pass target interviews at that target level. So you got to make sure you define your target level and then you adapt your stories to that. Step 3, train under pressure, not in comfort. Look, I appreciate that your friend is willing to do a mock interview with you over dinner, but that's not training. That's rehearsal in a safe environment with someone who's not going to challenge you. And by the way, you can also have peer mocks. And it's just the blind leading the blind. You're just like, well, okay, well, sounds good to me. Awesome. High fives. You need mocks where the interviewer throws curveballs, where they interrupt you, where they push back on your answer, where they ask a follow-up you weren't expecting, where they sat there in silence after you finish talking and you have to decide, do I add more or do I stop? That's pressure, and that pressure is where agility is built. If your mock interviews aren't harder than the real thing, you're not training. You're just getting comfortable with your own stories in a room where nobody's really keeping score. This is where having coaches who actually make hiring decisions matters. Not career coaches, not people who've read about Google interviews, people who've run these loops, who've actually been on the other side, people who write the debriefs, people who know what hire HIRE sounds like at their company because they made the decision before. Look, our clients consistently say the mock interviews inside our program were tougher than the actual interview loops at Google, Amazon, Meta, Coinbase, whenever. And that's by design. Because if we can handle our mocks, the real thing, it's a relief. Step 4, build a recovery toolkit. Last one. This is a secret weapon of agile interviewee. Things will go wrong. You'll blank on a story. You'll give an answer that doesn't land. You'll misread the question. It happens to everyone, including the PMs who got hired. The difference recovery. Agile PMs don't avoid mistakes. They recover from them so smoothly that the interviewer doesn't even notice. They have a toolkit. When you blank on a story, pause, take a breath, say, let me think about the best example for this. Buy yourself 10 seconds, 30 seconds. That pause signals thoughtfulness, not panic. When an answer doesn't land, you can feel it. The interview's energy drops. Instead of plowing through, brace to a stronger example. Actually, wait, I've been thinking about this question more and I thought of a better illustration. Is it okay if I just go right into it and redirect? When they ask something you didn't prepare for, don't force fit a prepared answer. Take a beat. Think about which of your narratives has the closest thread and then pull that thread. It doesn't have to be perfect. It has to be authentic and responsive. The product managers who bomb interviews aren't the one who make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. They're the ones who can't recover, and recovery is a trainable skill. Now, one more thing before I wrap up, because this is important. Interview agility compounds and interview preparation doesn't. Here's what I mean. When you're agile in round 1 and it goes well, your confidence spikes. You walk into round 2 feeling better than before and feeling like you belong there. Round 2 goes better than round 1. By the time you hit the loop, the final 4 or 5 interviews in a day, you're on a roll. You're in flow. Each interview feeds the next. Now contrast that with the prep early approach. You prepare for round 1 and it went okay. Next round, goes a different direction that you expected. You fumble, your confidence craters. You might not get the next round, or you're just second guessing everything by then. And by the last round, if you still make it, you're in survival mode. Interview agility creates a virtuous cycle. Interview prep creates a fragile one. One unexpected question and the whole thing cracks. There's a massive downstream effect that people don't think about. The product managers who walk into offer negotiation having crushed every round, having been that agile PM, not, product development agile, but interview agility. Well, they have shown up as the clear, confident leader in every conversation, and they have fundamentally different leverage in negotiation than the product manager who barely scraped through. The negotiation is shaped by the interview is shaped by your agility. It all connects. One of our clients got up-leveled twice during the interview processes. Not because his resume said something different, but it's because how he showed up. The company literally moved him up 2 levels based on the way he communicated, his experience in the room, and how he adapted his stories to everybody who was there. In fact, we actually helped him prepare. We helped him figure out what this person is likely going to ask, practice agility again and again, because it was a very high-level executive interview. And that's interview agility paying compound interest. So let me bring this home. Interview preparation asks, what's the right answer? Interview agility asks, what does this person need to hear at this level in this moment, and how do I deliver it with conviction? That's the difference between candidates who prepare and candidates who compete. And in a market where everyone has access to the same frameworks, the same AI tools, the same star templates, the ones who compete are the ones who get hired. Every interview you walk into with prep but no agility is an interview where a less experienced product manager, somebody who trained agilities, is going to beat you. Not because they're better at the job, but because they're better at communicating why the right person for the job in real time, under pressure. And by the way, isn't that what 90% of the product management job is all about? If this resonated, if you've been prepping and it's not converting, and if you keep getting to the final round and losing and you don't know exactly why, I'd love to help you figure out exactly where that gap is. Book a free career strategy session with my team. The link is in the description. We look at how you're currently telling your stories, diagnose your level calibration, show you what interview agility looks like for your specific level. We've done this with over 1,000 PMs. Average 35% plus compensation increase. We work with you until you land your role. Stop preparing and start competing. And once you've done that, make sure you watch this video where I walk through step by step exactly how I would job search in today's market. I'll see you in the next one.